So today the United States Treasury announced that it is going to be giving the firm Madoff Securities $20 billion. A spokesperson for Madoff said that as the bailout is designed to go to the worst investment firms who made bad decisions, surely our firm deserves a large portion of the bailout because nobody made decisions as bad as ours. That's obviously a joke, but the situation is no joke. There is no bailout that the United States Treasury is going to give to Madoff. But the reality is not that much different from it. They really are going out of their way to reward the worst companies, the companies that made the worst decisions. And many investment firms and banks that didn't have anything to do with this subprime. What are their situation now? Well, they're hurting like all firms, all companies in this economy, all financials are hurting under the economic conditions, but they don't have any bailout. So they're now competing. It's a competitive market. This is still America last time I checked. It's a competitive market, and you have good companies that made good decisions, that worked hard, who are competing against companies that made bad decisions, and oh, by the way, have billions and billions of taxpayer dollars to prop them up. That's not fair. In a perfect race, if you had two companies competing, company A and company B, all else being equal, it's not fair to give one of them $20 billion. It's especially not fair if you give the one who made the bad decisions more money. I use the example, I say, you know, if somebody comes out with onion flavored ice cream and they're trying to compete against a good company, do you give them a bailout? You say, oh, I'm sorry, you made such a bad decision. Onion-flavored ice cream, it turned out to be a really bad idea, but you know what? We're going to give you a bailout. No, you fail. I'm sorry. It's a cold, hard world, and I know that I'll get a lot of emails, everybody whining and complaining about, oh, don't you understand? They'll go under. Yes, they'll go under. They should go under. That's the cold, hard reality of capitalism. If you have a better way, let me know. I'd love to hear it. But the system of rewarding the foolish, and this goes across the board. It's not just the companies, it's the individuals as well. Individuals deserve to take some responsibility for this. I'm tired of hearing about people who are victims of predatory lending. Unless you're somebody who is mentally ill or was physically forced into signing a contract or was outright lied to, then I have very little sympathy. I know there are people who got in over their heads, and I'm sorry, but don't make the people who didn't get in over their heads pay for that. We're now talking about some of this bailout money going to people who are homeowners now who are either in default or about to go into default. What about the one who worked like crazy and saved and saved and saved? I'm a financial advisor. I had a woman come into my office one time over 10 years ago. I'll never forget it. She was very poorly dressed, and she had a very basic job, an hourly job. I think she was making like $8 an hour. And she sat down, and a couple of my colleagues kind of rolled their eyes. They said, oh gee, you know, who's this person Bruce is stuck with coming in off the street, you know, going to open a $100 account or something? She had managed to save $250,000. I said, how did you do it? She said, well, I only make $14,000 a year, but I know there are people who get by on 8 or 9, so I just pretend that I'm on 8 or 9, and I save the rest. And she'd been doing that for 30 years. She owned her home outright, and she had $250,000 saved up. She doesn't get a bailout. She doesn't get a bailout. Somebody who went and bought a home that they couldn't afford gets a bailout. Now, I know there are some very sad stories, and I know I'll get the emails, people saying, you don't understand, these people are losing. Yeah, I get it. I get it. It's a hard world we're in right now. It's a hard economic climate. But the people, it's like being robbed. If you're robbed, you don't expect your neighbor to pay for you because your neighbor wasn't robbed, even if it's not your fault. Let's give you the benefit of the doubt. Let's say you were absolutely conned by someone into getting a mortgage and you can't afford it now. I'm sorry. But do you really think that it's fair to make everyone else who didn't get conned pay for it? It doesn't make sense. The companies that made mistakes and the individuals that made mistakes should not be rewarded for their mistakes. If anyone should be rewarded, it's the ones who didn't do this. Why doesn't the government knock on the door of the banks that had nothing to do with the bailout and say, wow, congratulations, good job, here's $10 billion. Why don't they knock on the doors of the hardworking people like this woman and say, congratulations, you've done everything you should. You saved, you pay your taxes, and you didn't make any bad decisions. Congratulations, here's $200,000. That won't happen because we're now in an upside down world, and it shouldn't happen, by the way. You shouldn't have government giving money to anybody. It doesn't make sense, and there is no economic example that I know of in history where it ever has made sense. It's wrong, and it just is the worst thing for America, worst thing for the world.